Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Chad Yoshinaga. I'm with NOAA Fisheries. We're a line office within the NOAA organization. And what I'm going to talk about today is some work that we've been doing for a number of years now, for the last 10, 12 years now. It's a joint effort between a bunch of different agencies within NOAA, external partners like the U.S. external federal partners, like the U.S. Coast Guard, Park Services, all these other places, state agencies, DLNR, DoCare, and private companies and volunteers. And so what we've done is one of the biggest problems that we were seeing, and if you were here, I don't know if anybody came the last time I was talking back in November, we talked about monk seals and some of the dangers of monk seals. Well, the same thing with all marine mammals, including the large whales, is the marine debris. It's been a big issue lately. You've probably seen some information about that, some news clips, NOAA going, cleaning up the reefs, things like that. One of the things that really affects marine mammals, especially, in addition to a lot of other species in the ocean, is this derelict marine debris that's floating around the ocean, or fishing gear that the animals are getting tangled in. And one of the things we've been seeing is a lot of entanglements with large whales. And these are not just local entanglements, local fishing gear. This is stuff that they're dragging around for thousands of miles. We see gear from Alaska when the whales migrate down here. So last week, Patty came, talked about the migration. 2 weeks ago, Patty came to talk about the migration. In the summer, the humpback whales are up in Alaska feeding. And in the wintertime, they come down here starting from about November through April or so. And when they're down here, even when they're in Alaska, we see them entangled in fishing gear and all that kind of stuff. And there's a network up there that works with those animals. But a lot of it is being dragged down here. The hardest thing about dealing with large whale entanglement is the ability for us to get to the animals. You know, it's a very, very dangerous task because you're trying to get up to a 40-foot-long, 40-ton animal and cut, gear off of it. And so there's a network up in Alaska that works on the whales up there. Part of our network, the team that's in Alaska works on whales up there. And then there's people trying to get in. Oh, sorry about that. So there's a team up, there's a network up in Alaska that works on animals there. But obviously, again, getting to the animals is the hardest part of this work. And so they can't get to all of them. And then we see them dragging all this gear down to Hawaii in the wintertime when they come down to give birth. And again, same thing. We're dealing with open ocean conditions. Our natural trade winds bring us, it keeps us cool. Also makes it difficult for us to get out in the water sometimes to get to these animals, right? What we're gonna do, I'm gonna show you a video that was developed by Akua Films. It kind of outlines and kind of does, it's basically gonna do the work for me for today. It's gonna tell you all about it. And then I brought some of the gear here to demonstrate what you're seeing in the video. Let's see, but the network, like I said, consists of, it's called the Hawaiian Island Humpback Whale National Marine Sanctuary Entanglement Response Network. And it's, like I said, it encompasses multiple agencies. We work with the Coast Guard, we work with across the NOAA, different line office, sanctuary office, fisheries office, the general public. The general public, you guys out on the water are our first line of defense. You're the ones who are telling us, hey, we see a whale that has a buoy attached to it, all right? Because we don't have enough staff to be out there all the time. Same with the monk seals. It's the volunteers, it's the public on the beach that is seeing the animals and reporting back to us so that we can go out and respond. And that's the key here, is that we need the information so that we can respond. We don't want the general public responding to these things because it's very dangerous, especially when you're dealing, like I said, with a 40-foot-long, 40-ton animal out on the open ocean in rough conditions. A lot of the gear we use is customized. A lot of it is manufactured, is designed by us. Even the boats, they're not just off-the-shelf Boston Whaler boats. They're custom designed boats. We actually started using a lot of the military boats. The one we use, our go-to boat for working on animals is the ones the Navy SEALs use. And we took the Navy SEAL boat, we modified that boat to do this type of work. So again, a lot of it is customized. So, but it starts with you guys out on the water. The commercial tour boats, the fishing boats, the recreational boats. You guys spot something, report it in, and that way we can get to the animals. But again, the hardest part of this is getting to the animals. Let's see. So the film itself, it was produced by Akua Films. It's actually won 3 film festival awards. The most recent one came from Rome, and it was the Special Jury Award for the feature documentary at the Pelagos Film Festival of the Sea. So it's a really well-produced film. It had opened the 5th season of the national PBS program Natural Heroes. So it's actually been around for a while. It was produced, I think, back in 2011 was when it was produced. And the person you're going to see kind of narrating is Ed Lyman. He's the head of the program. He's with the Sanctuaries group, but he's the head of the program. He's in Maui. They got the most response. They got the most animals out there because it's right in that national sanctuary area, right? And so, so he's the one who's going to be narrating. But the network expands all the Hawaiian Islands, California, all the way up the coast, all the way up to Alaska, and even onto the East Coast. We work with the East Coast teams in the Bay of Fundy and those areas. Yeah. So it's a huge network. The Hawaiian network itself has about 250 participants, whether they be federal staff, partners, commercial entities, or volunteers. And we have volunteers that work with us too. So it's a huge network, but again, the biggest problem we have is getting to the animals. And very often we'll get a report and it'll be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month before we get back to that animal. And there's things we can do in the meantime to be able to track it, but really it's just waiting for the right opportunity, waiting for the animal to get into the right spot, waiting for the right weather conditions, waiting for the right resources. Sometimes we don't have resources. For a lot of us, this is a collaborative job duty. This is not our primary day job. So, making sure we have enough staff to back us up when we're out in the water, things like that. Having Coast Guard helicopters overhead watching us while we're doing this, spotting for us, sending us videos so we can see not only from what's on the water, but what's above, to be able to identify how to approach this entanglement. Right? Okay. Before I get started, are there any questions before I start the video? Any questions? Yes?
When you, in the dangerous part of approaching animal, is the animal kind of like, not like a tiger, but I mean, I know it's dangerous as you say, but are they kind of nice?
Yes, well, that's a good question. They're not aggressive. They're not aggressive. But, you got a 14-foot long flipper. And if the animal wants to look and see what's going on, it's going to move that flipper. And if you're in the way of that flipper, you can incidentally get hit and injured. And so they're not aggressive. And what you're going to see, what Ed's going to be talking about, is the way we approach the animals. It's not something you want to sneak up on an animal. You never want to sneak up on a large whale. It never goes good when you sneak up on large animals. It really doesn't. You want to let them know, and they're curious, and they're going to look. If they don't know what's going on, they're going to look, and they're going to move, and they're going to switch their tails. So you don't want to sneak up on them. You want to make sure that they know you're there, because they're not aggressive. Now, humpback whales are not aggressive, in a sense. If you start looking at right whales, those guys are crazy. They will be aggressive towards you. So there's a whole different technique when you're working with right whales. Yeah, the Northern Pacific right whale is very rare. The Northern Atlantic right whale is actually the ones that get a lot of entanglements on the East Coast, and they can be aggressive. And so that's a whole different level of work that we have to do with those guys. But for the most part, for us, we're dealing with humpbacks. We have had some larger fin whales show up with entanglement gear on it. Sperm whales on occasion will show up, and they're generally not too bad. It's not like Captain Ahab chasing the white whale. It's not that dramatic, but still, they're big animals, right?
Are the toothed whales more aggressive than baleen whales?
Not generally, no. I would say a right whale is much more aggressive than a sperm whale would be. And that's just their nature. But again, you don't want to sneak up on an animal. You want to make your presence known. And we actually, and we train a lot. And we train a lot more than when we're actually on the water. And then it's a lot of experience of knowing what the whale's going to do. Whales will, their behavior will do certain things, and you can kind of predict. And he'll talk about that and kind of the trigger signs we're looking at when we're working on an animal, when they start getting stressed, when they start getting angry. If there's multiple whales around, how to read the other whales, what the other whales are doing, because the other whales will come in and check us out too. And you don't want to be stuck between, 3 whales trying to maneuver out with marine debris in the water. So a lot of it is this experience of being able to spot what's going on around you, so that you can keep the team safe. Yes.
This lady brought up the topic.
Uh-huh.
Can you just explain briefly the difference between, she said, a baleen whale and
Baleen whales and toothed whales. Toothed whales, like your dolphins, basically they have teeth, right? And they're eating fish. The baleen whales are the ones that are basically filtering through the water, taking in krill, and so they have baleen in their mouths instead of actual teeth, where they're actually.
Which whales have teeth?
Sperm whales have teeth. So sperm whales are toothed whales. The dolphins, a lot of dolphins, the pilot whales, false killer whales, the orcas. Those are the toothed whales.
And dolphins are considered whales.
They're cetaceans. They're all cetaceans. So they're all and then the baleens are the humpbacks, the right whales, the fin whales, those types of things. Okay.
Could you also use the Hawaiian word for whale?
Could I use the Hawaiian word for what?
Will you please use the
I will try to interject it.
please?
Yes.
Do you ever get a sense that the whales are intelligent enough to know when you guys are trying to help them and not sense a threat?
That's always an interesting question. I get that question a lot for a lot of animals, seals and things like that. I couldn't say from a scientific standpoint. I wouldn't be able to say. They do act differently. Of course, the animal's entangled. It's probably injured. It's stressed. So their behavior is going to change. They might be more docile. They might be more aggressive if they're injured, right? Just like a dog, an injured dog. They could be either very timid or they could be more aggressive if you try and approach. So each animal is really different. Each approach is different. We don't want to assume that they're going to be docile when we're trying to work with them. We see certain behaviors that are consistent across animals. A lot of it deals with actually the stress, the other end of that, the stress end. We can tell when an animal is getting stressed. Do they know that we're there to help? I think there's certain examples of when animals approach people or even other animals for help. And so you do see some of that, but quite honestly, when you're working on this animal and you're worried about getting hit by a fluke, you're being really cautious, and you don't want to make any assumptions that animal's going to roll over for you or something like that. No, again, in the video, we'll show, there's a couple of case studies in the video that we worked on, where animals did things that helped us. And we may be able to attribute that to certain behaviors of the animal, like the animal just realizing that they need to turn to keep an eye on us, and that actually was beneficial to us. Whether we can attribute that to knowledge of we're helping them, it's hard to say. So, how's that for a scientific answer? Any other questions before we get started? All right. Again, Akua Films. This is a film entitled "In the Wake of Giants." And let's start this real quick here. Is that loud enough?
not going to be spooked. I can tell you from personal experience, you can spook a 45-foot whale. And you don't want to become the receiving end of a spooked 45-foot whale. We've estimated probably approaching 1,200 animals we've either cut free entirely or partially, at least enough that we increase animals' chances of survival. That's 1,200 animals from the Pacific and the East Coast of the U.S., from the network itself. We've had marine debris, terrestrial trash, and other sources as well. More, you put your boat on at night, whales got entangled in. We've had hydrophone rays entangled around these humpback whales. Well, you can imagine, trying to free a 40, 45 foot, 40 ton whale out in the open ocean is not an easy task. Okay.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, line over.
The Nantucket slave rod, you end up getting, historically speaking, that's what the whale has got. They were hooked up to that whale and they were towing behind it. Well, we get the same thing. It is exhilarating. You're sitting there and that whale early on might be doing, 4, 5, 6, even 7 or 8 knots. We had a yearling this season that we were able to cut through. It was doing 8+ knots. That's like nearly 10 miles per hour. Really, there's a lot of parallels, a lot similar to, just say, whaling. Back in the 1800s, the whalers had problems, slowing the whales down in order to kill them. Well, we need to slow them down in order to cut them free.
Let's fire out more. There you go.
What they were doing back then was harpooning whale, not to kill it, but to attach to it. Attached to harpoon was a line, went back to a barrel, big K. That barrel had buoyancy and drag, so it slowed the whale down, kept it at the surface.
There's no buoys.
They would repeat the process, add another barrel, another keg to the whale, to eventually it slowed down enough that the whales could row up in that skid and land the whale to death. That's what was really killing whales in 1950.
A little bit for a second.
We're not harpooning the whales, we're throwing grapples into the entangling gear, hooking up to them, establishing a control line, if you will. Attached to that control line is not a wooden barrel, but a polyball, a balloon buoy. Those polyballs are our kegging buoys. So they can slow the wheel down, keeping it at the surface, and actually reach out with knives on the end of balls and remove all the gear from that entangled animal.
Look up there. Flipper. Flipper's good. Yeah, flipper's good. Yeah. You get a little braver.
When we're doing whale rescue, there is a danger zone involved. Anywhere where the whale can hit you, and it's whale and it's flippers for the most part. So anything forward of that tail and beside the animal is that danger zone. And so what we're looking also for is indicators of when the whale might be stressed and might use one of those weapons. Squishing the tail can be very slow. Or a head rise might be maybe getting those eyes, which are kind of low on the body.
That kind of stuff worries me.
Getting them a little higher to kind of take aim on the inflatable boat that we're in. And it can also be trumping or a wheezy type blow. Typically whale flow sort of very clean sounding. And that's an indication of stress, panic, maybe even aggression.
You doing show belly or bubbles? What's he doing? Blowing bubbles. Someone's blowing bubbles. All the indicators of stress.
Our first report of the season was on December 1st.
6 o'clock, couple hundred yards.
It was a yearling humpback whale entangled in gear. It was through the mouth, over its back, and hundreds of feet of line trailing. And that yearling was still with its mother, and with an escorted adult humpback whale as well. We made a response effort. Unfortunately, the 3 animals made it into a channel rough seas. But we were able to tag the whales and keep track of them until really the next day.
go. That's in there. Okay, we're on. Okay, we're in. Clear this. Off. Throw that over. Yep. Okay. Okay. That's as tight as I can go.
The next day, we mounted a second response effort. As we went out, the tag had come off the whale. We relocated and reapplied the transmitter package. And 4 days later, with the U.S. Coast Guard's help, everything kind of came together. As we're very much aware of from our past experience with yearlings, they've been very tough to deal with.
Yep, let's see him come up here and definitely keep on here. Keep it out, get it out, get over, push over to the left. Okay, watch him do it, David. I'm gonna try to walk it, let's walk it. Let's keep going, let's walk it. We're gonna control the boat. Yeah, you do that, go to the port side.
A lot of times it's also the dynamics of the adults that are with the animal. They're free and they're mobile. The yearling wants to stay with its mother, wants to stay with escort, and that's why they don't want to slow down the car.
Here's the escort, yeah. Thanks, Dave. I hadn't seen you for a while. Yeah. He's a pain in the mother, it's not too bad. What is his investment here?
Once the wheel slowed down to about 4 knots, we were able to just get right on it. Flukes by brushing the bow and the eventually, we had to slow down enough that we could at least think about making the cut. About 10 minutes of gauging the length of the pole, the whale came up for a breath of air. We dropped the pole with the hook knife on the end, right in front of that little line. Disengaged the hook knife from the pole, backed away. And about 10 minutes later, the knife cut through, and the nice clean, bitter end of line got pulled right through the whale's mouth, through the baleen, and the whale was entirely free of gear. It's a network effort. It's very much a community-based effort. All that effort involves federal and state agencies, non-government organizations, nonprofits, the whale researchers here. The tour industry. That effort involves private citizens. I've got a guy here on Maui that's welding and adapted for some of our knives.
I've been both captain, whale tour operator for a lot of years, and it's really disheartening to see when they run into problems with man-made debris. Creating zero and the ocean. It's not like other stainless is different. So I learned on that one. It doesn't weld like it. Yeah, like
That's there between the Hawaiian Islands on a three-masted schooner, as well as running a vessel to Ko'olaue on a daily basis. And we see a lot of marine debris that washes up on the shores. Getting to be the guy that sits in the front of the inflatable is really the last job on the totem pole, and we really can't have everybody do that. There are a myriad of other little things that need to be done. The scientists need to be focused on the scientific sides of things, and there's grunt work to be done, so we need grunts. I really enjoy the idea that a whale gets free. The lines and the buoys that have come off of whales. We'll go back to working out how to avoid this from happening in the future.
When we receive a call, whether it's directly from a boat or from the hotline, we try to confirm whether it's something we can respond to.
Hi, this is Ed Lennon from the Humpback Whale Sanctuary. It's coming back because we had heard secondhand that there was a report of a ship-struck calf off of Lahaina. Is that true? Just double check with you guys. We just got a report of a ship-struck boat hitting a mother calf humpback whale. Sounds like the impact is enough that there's blood in the water.
Calf here? Yeah, might be here at 1. You guys get ready to engage this here. I can see it. Yeah, I didn't either.
What we're trying to do is let us network effort again. We've got some boats out there, we'll take advantage of that. However, right now, there's no one on site tracking the whale. They've lost track of it.
If the space inside probably. Let's see what the mother force on the side. Here comes Mom. Slowly. There she is. Good, yeah, pretty flat.
And we've lost the whale. So it's the old big needle, but a big haystack. It's exactly what it is. So, yeah, another example of that. 15 minutes in between that site and us being on site. And we were here looking for mother calf escort. Calf has been reported as struck by a boat. We wanted to see how bad that injury is and what is the survivorship of the animal, perhaps. Let's do our best. On April 7th, we had our 11th confirmed report of the season. We had another juvenile. We've had a lot of juveniles this year. Another juvenile humpback whale entangled in what was reported as local track here, and it was anchored by the pier. There was enough gear there that was anchoring in place. Okay. This shouldn't be that fast with the plane or anything, and then just be aware it really was going to an anchored line. So even though this animal was anchored, they're still not easy to deal with. Seems like she's moving around enough. We can pull that back on. How much better than the line? Not much. Yeah, the line's running this way. By the way,
Over time, the skills that have been used to disentangle whales has developed. It's evolved over time, and it's still being developed.
Sounds like that spot right there is safe. I don't want to be a bowling away in that tail.
The first part of the operation is establishing a control line, and that's usually typically done by a grapple hook such as this one here. The animal will have a line trailing in the water behind it as part of its own entanglement. The idea is to get some type of tool connected to that line so we can have control and be able to get close to cut the lines free. The grapple itself is then connected to our control line, which on the end of it has a buoy to have a nice tight pull between the grapple and the whale's line.
That same line provides us access to the animal. So what we did was we ended up sweeping up the anchoring line.
Rough it. And go ahead and start just arcing around there, Chad. I know this is not doing much now, but
We just lay the grapple over the side of the inflatable and motor slowly around the animal, trying not to disturb it, until that grapple fell into that anchoring line.
See if I have it. I think I have it. Yeah, I got it. It's overhead. Port side, Chad, on the line. I think I'm just kind of close to it, close to where to be. Yeah, look at that. We grabbed it underneath of it.
When we make our first approaches, our initial approaches to the animal is not to cut the animal free, it's to document, to assess the entanglement, so that when it comes time to cut the animal free, we know what we're up against.
You guys, better look. Better look. You right?
And one thing we try to do is let them see the night coming. We don't want to surprise them.
It makes me a lot comfortable.
So a lot of times we'll reach out and let them see the night coming. We'll actually touch them first with the pole itself before we actually commit to reaching out and hooking that knife into the gear and making the cuts.
Everybody's gonna be around for it. She's gonna have the actually snap another pole in place now, at least maybe two. Okay. So we get polar position for it, be ready. So now we're gonna figure out where we're gonna be.
We was getting towards the end of the day, and we were running out of time. When we pulled up to the whale to access it, we noticed the whale behaved a little differently. It did something in our favor, and that is it rolled up on its side. And you can see it's better. But that also showed us the entanglement.
Just let it slow down. I don't want to cut the fluid just yet. And now you look at the bail, cycle it out, okay? And over. Good job, guys. Here we go. She's running. Now. Now we see what happens here. What it like? Yeah. Okay. First time, we got to really watch this line down though. It's going to go pretty well, okay? So I don't know if we're able, we got the end here. I don't know if we're able to pull it from again. Yeah. Guys, if we got gear, we don't have to get a little close to this whale and document. We do good. Okay. Do you want me to remove it? We can't. Yeah, remove that. Okay. We can't quite call it board yet. So that's the thing I don't want to do. So this is good removed. Okay. What we don't want to do is bring it away both yet. Okay. That's what I intend to. Let's see. Put that way. Okay, we clean up the bitter end afterwards. We don't touch the totally free yet. We're being cautious. Right, I think we got the grab fine, isn't it? Okay, good. What we're gonna do is I'm vertical right now. We're vertical. I think the whale's free swimming, and I just have one little bit here on its right flipper. Yep. It might come off. It was one rack. We knew that on the right side.
Yeah, she moved free and moving.
There it goes. See? It's loose. Come out. Let me out. Good job. I like it when things go as planned.
Over the last couple of years, we've been able to rescue 14 different animals, and this is just some of the gear we've gotten off those animals. Now, overall, we've removed 6,500 feet of line off the whales. And what you have here is just a variety of different gear. Some of it's gear, some of it's not. For instance, this gear was set off of Alaska, very heavy gauge line. This gear was set off the Pribilof Islands, that's in the middle of the Bering Sea. It's some 2,400 nautical miles away from Hawaii here. That's heavy gauge line. A lot of people think, well, heavy gauge line, that's what you really got to worry about. That's what's legal. Not necessarily the case. The small gauge line, like this gear removed from a whale a couple years ago, can be just as lethal. Here, this creates more drag, but creates kink on the animal. It protects the animal to a certain degree. This may have less drag, but the small diameter is more lethal, and it can easily cut into the flesh of the animal. So in many ways, I think smaller gauge, strong lines, synthetic lines, are actually worse than the heavy gauge here we have here. So this is actually not a buoy we got off of a whale. This is the buoy we put on a whale in order to keg it down. This is our kegging buoy right here. Nothing more than fishing gear, it's a polyball. And we add that on there to keep that on the surface and slow it down in order to get all this gear off the whale. Adding gear to get gear off. We see evidence, if you will, through scholar studies which indicate maybe 50% have been recently entangled. Recent studies have suggested maybe 200 to 400 animals per year falling victim to that entanglement here in northern state. I know that my cutting a whale free is not going to do all I say now. True enough, it helps that particular animal. What drives me here is answering those kind of questions. What type of gear it is, where it was set, what part of the gear that we've been entangled, how it might have been entangled. That's the driving force here. And it's conservationists, fishermen, managers, scientists, all working together to help solve the problem.
All right, what do you think? So back to your question about do they know? You know, there was a good example in there of the animal we worked on off Haleiwa where, you know, we use the behavior to our advantage. You know, so the question initially was, do they know that we're there to help? I can't say yes or no to that, but we can utilize what we understand of their behavior to help us gain access to certain situations, basically put it in our favor. Now, obviously, very dangerous, right? I've been stressing that. The network, we train, we have customized gear, customized boats. One of the primary rules is we never, ever get in the water because there's just too much, we're just too much at a disadvantage, right? We never get in the water. People die every year getting in the water, trying to cut whales, dolphins, turtles free, seals. You know, people die every year. We keep track of it because, you know, so one of the rules is for us to never get in the water, and we don't expect, you know, people, you know, general public to do that. What we want is for you to call it in, let us know. If you can't stay with the animal, because like I said, like Ed said, it's a big needle, but it's a big haystack. There were days where we're out for 8 hours with Coast Guard helicopters running search patterns over our heads, you know, us on the water doing search patterns, 2 or 3 boats at a time, and we just cannot find that. We find a ton of whales, 20, 30 whales there, but we just can't find that one that we're looking for, right? So you got a big haystack, you got a bunch of big needles, and you're trying to find that one needle to cut free, right? And so the best thing you can do, you see an animal, possibly entangled, even if it's from shore, possibly entangled, track it, keep track of it, call it in, and stay as long as you can. A lot of the boats, especially in Maui, the tour boats sometimes they'll even stop their tours to stay with the animals till we can get our teams out to work on the animals. And then, of course, it's not always something we can get to and cut free. Sometimes we'll put telemetry on it. We'll put a satellite tag on it. And that way we can track the animal for, the tags run for about 2.5 months. So we can track the animal for 2.5 months and wait for it to come into an area where we can work on it safely. Yeah. And of course, we put, you know, large well disentanglement response, do not remove from well, because the buoy's on the surface, people go, oh, we can cut it free, and they cut the buoy free, and then they go, hey, we helped, we cut the buoy free, and it was our buoy that we were using to track the animal. So, and again, and even there was a situation last year off of Koholave Oh no, I'm sorry, that was off of Nihao, where there's an animal with very cryptic gear. The gear obviously has got a lot of algae growth on it. It's hard to see. If there's buoys on it, it's great because that's on the surface, right? But that's also the easiest to get to. And so when people want to help, they're going to try and help and cut what they can get to free, which is the buoys. And so they reported it, they took pictures of it, and then they went and they cut what they could get to. They cut the buoys free. So now all the gear is underwater, and we can't see it anymore, and we never found that whale again. So the most important thing is let us handle it, but report it because we need your help out there. And then, you know, cutting a whale free, we got, last year we got 4 whales cut free, disentangled completely out of 11 reports, and that's just what's reported. You know, so it's a Band-Aid fix. It's not, we're not going to solve the problem, but more importantly, we have support boats, we have other scientists with us that are taking photos, that are documenting, that are even the little bits of gear that we can get, we'll get back, and we can hopefully figure out a way to address the problem from its source. Because cutting whales free, we can do that for the rest of our lives, and you know, the problem's not going to go away. Right? So the data is important, the documentation. When you're calling it in, if you do see an animal, you know, things we need to know to make our risk assessments accurate so that we can decide if we can go or not. You know, we want to know the type of gear. So if you're seeing buoys or just line, heavy gauge line, light line, whatever you can tell us, the color of the line, the color of the buoys, if there's flags on them. Sometimes a lot of the long line gear has flags on them so they can find the long lines. Well, the whales will tangle up in that and they'll drag these flags on. That's great. We can see them, right? But we need to know what we're looking for. And then the condition of the animal. Sometimes we won't respond simply because it's not life-threatening. It could simply be a one turn of a line around its fluke, and at some point the gear is just going to fall right off. We don't want to waste resources going out and doing that if it's something that might just come off. Or if we have time, the condition of the animal, is it weak? What is it doing? Is it logging? We call it logging when the animals are just kind of laying on the surface. Yeah. Are they moving? How fast are they moving? Are they logging? The color of the animal. The whales tend to change color as they start getting weaker and sicker. Partially because there's these lice that will attach onto the sick whales. And so the whales will turn kind of gray or white almost. So the color of the animal. Are there injuries? Is the line cutting into the flesh? Do you see blood? Do you see open wounds? Those are the types of things we need to know because that will gauge and allow us to accurately gauge the level of response, whether we send a first team out to just tag the animal or if we really need to send the disentanglement team out to cut that, to try to cut that animal free. So those are the kinds of things we need to know when you call it into us. Any questions? Yes. Yes.
Somebody designed this thing to cut the line.
Yep.
Assuming you have a line that's diameter maybe just a little bit as on your finger. When they look it up, how many minutes or how many minutes does it take to go
That's
that line?
good question because I'm segueing into that. I actually brought some of the gear in that we use. Again, it's all customized stuff. And we have a myriad of, I mean, you know, it's responding to something that you haven't seen yet, right? So you basically take everything with you, and that's why we need all the support boats, because we have to have, you know, extra keg buoys, extra different knives, different poles, different methods based on what we're seeing. We'll get up to them. It's a very, very slow process. You get up, you take a look, you back off. Okay, we're going to use this, this, and this right now. We go up there, we try that. Okay, we got the kegs on. Now we back off. Let's see what the animal does. So, you know, we've spent 8-10 hours on the water with one animal trying to figure out how best to approach it. Yeah. And so we have various different knives. Everything is custom made. We've learned from our mistakes. And so the stuff you saw there is actually some of the first generation stuff. We have different poles now. We have poles that are 30 feet long that are so light. I can hold a 30-foot long pole like this, you know, with carbon fiber poles that I can use to cut animals free. You know, so we can get farther reaches, so we can keep ourselves safer. You know, we're trying to use as much remote access as possible to the animals.
What's the quickest on a rope like that? What's the quickest that they've been able to cut?
You saw that one, the last one we had, where the animal was anchored, and that line went in. That was the first cut. That first cut, the line went in the water. He hooked it up, and it just slid right through. Yeah, very, very sharp knives. Yeah, yeah.
The other question was, what happened to that what happened to that whale?
Which one?
The one that we're trying to release, the last one.
The last one. That was probably the most challenging. When an animal's free swimming and entangled, you can drive right up to it, right? Grapple in the control line, put the kegs on, slow it down, but the animal's still moving. They'll still be moving to some degree, and then you can. So when we're working on the animals, we're not using our engines. We use the engines to get to the animal. We grapple in, and we control line it. And it's one person is up there. Their responsibility is just to hang on to that line. And when we're ready to move up, they'll hand over hand the line up to the animal, cut, back off, wait. Okay, we got to make another cut. Hand over hand up, cut, back off, wait. Right. But the animal's moving. It's fine. It's easy because the animal's moving. The problem we had with the Haleiwa animal, this was April Haleiwa, was it was anchored. It had we think it was the crab gear that they use off Haleiwa at about a 2 mile line. There's a bunch of crab lines out there. So we think this juvenile got tangled in that, and whales, when they get injured or tangled like that, they'll tend to want to run inshore. So he ran inshore, anchored himself, and so we had this juvenile whale, 30-foot whale, on a leash, and so trying to get up behind it, it kept going to the end of its leash, turning back on us. And so that's why Ed was saying what we did instead, again, completely, we never tried this before, but with the gear we had, we actually tried to sweep. So I was driving in circles around the animal trying to sweep that anchor line so we can get the control line on. And once we did that, then I had a control line that I could use my boat engines to maneuver around and work the animal. And we actually did cut it free, and it got free. It was right when the sun was going down, just when we were running out of light. We finally got that last cut. We realized what was going on with the last cut, and it cut it free. Yeah. Yes?
Two questions too. One, is there cameras out there with the poles now, or is it just for the
No. Actually, so the wonderful thing about working with Ed is all of this was all stock footage. We videotaped, because it's all documentation, right? We got to document. We got to, because we're not only for what kind of gear it is, but we're also trying to our techniques, is what we're doing work on, tool work. The wonderful thing about Ed is he narrates everything. He just talks. He's constantly talking, which is really good, because when we're in the boats, we get exactly what Ed's thinking, and we know how to respond to that. So that wasn't, we put cameras on everything. We have actually, those are GoPros. Everybody's got a helmet with a GoPro. GoPros on every pole, so we can actually document what the lines are doing, what the lines are doing. And now we have.
At the time of the event, are you watching anything?
No, in those situations, no. We're starting to get cameras where we can live feed. So we're putting them on the pole, we can live feed, so we can actually see what they're doing.
The second question was, has there been any legislation or practices enacted based on what you learned about the wind?
Not directly, no. But you can, if you go to like the Gulf shrimp fisheries in the Gulf, they have actually developed heads, turtle exclusion devices based on the entanglements and when they're trawling for shrimp. So they'll actually we actually have developed exclusion devices. We've developed weak links in line so that they would break free, not drag the line around. No legislation, but we have provided stuff like that to the fisheries. So hey, try this, because they don't lose their gear, right? Yeah, they'd rather lose the lead lines and their gear still there than lose all their gear. So it's a mutually beneficial effort. And then the whale's free swimming, and they're just tangled. Yes, yeah. So the first thing they showed was the grapple. These are the grapples. This is the first thing we want to get on the animal. This is their grapple. This is what we're throwing at the gear. Our lead lines. This is what we get on. We gotta get this on the animal. If we get this on the animal, we have a control line that we can walk up and down. Yeah, this is pretty heavy, but this is it's not meant to. These aren't sharp. It's not meant to hook into the animal. It's a grab line, right? So we throw this into the gear, into the trailing gear, and it cinches in. Work the animal. This is something a little different. So like I said, we don't want to get on the animal, right? We want to use as much remote gear as we can. So a lot of times, if we got, especially if we got the monofilament, the long line gear, that's really dangerous. It cuts really deep into the animal. The harder part is we can't grab into that because it'll slip through. So a lot of times if you identify it as long filament or long line, this looks like something in medieval dark ages. I'm not going to pass this around because this thing is very sharp. It's basically got blades in it. See that, right? Yeah. So we use this instead to try and just cut through. See those blades in there? Yeah. It's better for the knife. It blew a lot of
that, when you grapple that, you just trying to hang on to the long.
Yeah, so we're trying to throw this as close as we can to the whale. It won't, it won't hook onto anything in the whale. But we're trying to get this onto the whale, hook into the mono, and then the control line will attach one of those big cakes to it and just let it go. And the weight of the keg, as the animal's moving forward, the weight of the buoy will slowly drag this grapple through and cut. And then once it's free, grab it again, grab the buoy, throw the next grapple in. The other knives we use for that same purpose. So we have a bunch of different knives that we sell. All stainless steel, yeah. So these are hook knives. We have adapters that go in the pools, and then the line is attached to this eye. And so what we'll do is we'll drive up, place this knife in the gear, pull the pole out, quick release on the pole, the knife will stay with the line, and again throw the buoy overboard, or we just hang on to it from the boat, or we can back off 20, 30 feet. And so we're clear of any of the swishing or the tail flapping, or we can use the boat to just pull the knife through the gear. And then we actually have knives that are attached to the poles. So these knives screw into a different type of adapter that's on the end of our pole. And we can actually use a pole.
What made you get involved in this?
Well, part of my job, I'm a marine mammal biologist, so a lot of my work is response. Responding to sick seals, sick dolphins. I also have an expertise in boat operations and boat handling, and so that's the hardest. This is the most challenging part, is being the boat operator, because you not only have to be a good boat operator, you have to understand the behaviors and be able to identify those behaviors. Because you're really the first person in charge of, maneuvering up to the animals.
Okay, what's the Hawaiian word for whale?
Oh, see, I've been trying to remember it. It's kohola, right? Kohola. Yeah. Kohola.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
I got a question.
Yes.
Have you ever had one, now I don't know if the fishermen use metal wire cable or
Mhm.
whatever, but has there ever been a cable type thing?
Oh yeah, we've seen it. A lot of times, there's so much gear entangling that it'll be lengths. There'll be wire cable in between, lengths in between, but there's enough mono or rope in between that we can cut through. Yeah, and then
How do you cut through them?
well, we get it in front or behind of the wire. Yeah, we'll get to the soft stuff. Yeah, and then of course there's the level of entanglement. A whale that's got entanglement around its fluke, pretty simple. You come up behind it, grapple in the control line, walk up, cut. If the whale, like on the last whale we saw on the video where it's entangling its flukes, you got to get up alongside the whale. A little bit more difficult, because now you're in a danger zone. You're in an area where the whale can hit you. The worst ones are the ones where you got whales with entanglements going through their mouths, because now you're up by the head, and so the big, its weapons, its flukes are behind you. And again, those are the types of things we need to know, though, so we know what gear to bring, we know how to approach the animal.
Did they come up with a lightweight, short-term sedative? Just take the edge off.
It takes too much. It takes a lot of. It takes. On occasion, when a whale beaches itself, and we just can't save it, we have to euthanize it. Lethal injection. You only got, for humans, it's only about this. Those insecticide sprayers, the backpacks. It takes 3 of those full to get enough euthanasia into a whale that size. So
Just take the edge off.
it's dangerous. We don't want to sedate animals in the water because they could drown.
Short term.
It's so unpredictable, especially if we have to go intramuscular.
Especially with juvenile.
Yeah, especially intramuscular. It's even with humans, it's hard to gauge sedative if you're going IM. When we work with the seals and we have to sedate them, we'll go IV, and we can predict almost exactly what the dosage is based on the weight of the animal, because you have to know what the weight of the animal is. You have to know what the human is when you sedate an animal or sedate a human. There's no way we can gauge the weight of a whale. So there's too much variable. Yeah. I would honestly rather have a fully awake animal, whether it's a seal or a dolphin or a whale, because the behavior is consistent, and I can predict that behavior to some degree, versus something who is sedated, who I won't know if they're going to be active or sedate. They might be doing different things, right? So I personally, in my experience, I would rather have an animal that's fully awake and I can predict what's going to. I can, see the behavior happening and work with the animal.
Thank you so